Welcome back to Beyond the Tour. I'm Jake. This is episode 27. With me, as always, is Luke.
Jake, how are you, mate?
I'm very well. We took a break last week with not a lot going on in the golf world we thought, but turns out there's a bit that sort of happened over
Yeah,
that
that's
break.
right, mate. And I'm riding high on cloud nine today. I shot my all-time low score yesterday in the club competition at RQ. So just still basking in the memories of my greatest round ever.
Did you win?
I did win, actually. 44 points, got the job
that's
done.
okay. Yeah, you'd hate to sort of get rolled in that. We generally play with a group of guys, about 10 of us over 3 or 4 groups, and we play five aside. So you can have a front nine winner, a back nine winner. And a couple of years ago, I had a blinder as well, and I'd sort of come in with had 27 points or something for one of the nines. I walk in there, and these old guys who we normally play with are sort of sitting at the table, just grin on their face, just like got their coffees and their beers, loving themselves. They go around the table of 18 and 17. This one guy, Shane, he goes, 26. And he's just laughing. They get around to me. I say, 27. And like, you did fucking not. No, fuck. It was the greatest day of my life. He was
absolutely
a yappy bloke.
Yeah, mate. I've had the handicap slashed and burnt though. So have you heard of this -1 rule? If you beat your handicap by 8 shots or more, they really
a full stroke or whatever
by
it
8
is.
shots. So 44 points, eight better than 36. Dropped 2.5 shots overnight, the handicap. So I'm going to have to keep the game sharp.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get stuck in. Not a lot really in the golf front. Not a huge amount of interest really. We've had the PGA Tour is in Mexico at the Worldwide Technology Championship, won by Austin Eckert. On the DP World Tour is the HSBC Championship in Abu Dhabi, won by Paul Waring. Tour Hatton performed really well there. Rory McIlroy ended up with another top 5, which he pretty much does anywhere he turns up these days. And then really what else we've got? The Australasia, the PGA Tour of Australasia senior PGA champ, Andre Stolz, and the LPGA, the Lottie Championship, which was won by Lim Kim.
Yeah, the biggest event really of the week, I think, was the HSBC Championship in Abu Dhabi there. Pretty interesting and entertaining event from my perspective. Great viewing window for us Aussies as well. So so maybe we start there and dissect the win there by Paul Waring.
Yep. He had control of it coming into the final day, and didn't look like it was. I was looking at some of the names coming from a long way back, or a little bit back. Hatton had a brilliant final round. Rory and a few of those guys. So, but Waring sort of controlled the day really.
Yeah, clearly the strongest field of the week in terms of the tournaments that were running, and the likes of Lowry, Fleetwood, Hatton, McIntyre, Højgaards, etc., all in the field here. So Waring taking a 1-shot lead into Sunday, but he had a really deep pack chasing him, and so it was a really strong test of his mettle under pressure. And the guys, they really did come at him. Sunday saw Rory make 3 birdies in his first 5 holes. It was only 2 shots back after being 5 to start the day. He was only 2 shots back from Waring before Waring had even put the ball in the cup for the first hole. So he definitely would have felt the pressure. And then Hatton finished extremely fast, as we saw, to actually catch him, requiring Waring to sort of birdie those final 2 holes just to seal the deal. So hearing him talk after the win was quite interesting. I think he kind of got a little nervy in round 3 there and got stuck in neutral or in quicksand a little bit, but he was certainly aggressive all day on Sunday. Some of the lines he was taking off the tee and at pins were showing that he was there to win.
It had to be really, didn't he? The scoring on that final day was incredibly low.
crazy low. And I mean, we'd seen it earlier on in the tournament as well. So, Waring himself had a 61, Fleetwood had a 62. So, the birdies were certainly there. When you've got the likes of those names that we mentioned in the field, you've just got to keep the pedal to the metal.
You absolutely do. Rory sort of come in with some swing changes. Was the big storyline coming into the week. The fact that he hadn't really been looking at his ball flight at all for 3 weeks. Did you see much change with that?
I thought I noticed the trigger move, the takeaway, JT sort of takeaway was a new thing for Rory. I haven't seen him do that before. So to see him with the partial takeaway as the trigger move to the swing was interesting. As you say, sort of spent a lot of time on simulators and trying to affect the swing changes without watching the ball live, just, sort of letting it hit the simulator screen. So clearly getting his reps in ahead of the TGL, which is due to start next year, hey?
Yeah, that's going to be very exciting.
He says tongue in cheek. I mean, seriously, are you interested? Will you give it a go? Like, what do you think of the TGL?
I don't think so. I've been thinking about this. For anything to have real interest from my perspective, outside of just turning it on and just having it be a bit of entertainment, it has to mean something. And I know this has been a big sort of, they're sort of discussing about Live, the fact that, it's like an exhibition league, but that has merit. Like you see someone like Joachim Neiman come out and sort of, he probably has led the way on Live in terms of giving that meaning, that real meaning. And, maybe Adelaide helps a little bit with the crowd to some extent, and the Rippers coming into that playoff. So I think that's starting to mean something. And I just don't know that you can get a simulator league and make it mean something. I don't think the players can get involved in it. I don't know. That's sort of my read on it, though.
Yeah, I'm a little the same. I'm trying not to be in the camp of what the Live detractors were. It's all a gimmick. It's all a joke. It means nothing. It's an exhibition sport. I mean, clearly this is more of an exhibition sport than what Live is, given that it's indoors and using a simulator. Like, it's so different to what we see from traditional golf. I kind of liken it to maybe the evolution of cricket. And, it's gone through its different phases. And obviously Big Bash has cemented its place within the cricketing community. And there will be the purists who think that it's, an affront to Test cricket, which is true cricket. And look, I'm sympathetic to that view, but equally, my kids would much rather go, well, probably my daughters would much rather go and watch a Big Bash game than they would a game of Test cricket. Particularly my eldest son would probably rather go and watch Test cricket because he understands the intricacies and the nuances. So I guess it depends how deep you want to get into golf, but much the same as Live has done, it's brought new audiences and new fans to the game. And so I'm kind of having a little bit of an open mind to TGL, but would say that I'm skeptical about whether it's going to be around in a few years' time. But I'm okay with the experiment to see if it's something that there's appetite for out there.
Yeah, I think this more than any other sort of form of competition is going to really rely heavily on the guys. They're almost actors as golfers, because they're going to, everything's going to sort of depend on how they attack it and how they play and the type of.
And look, there's every chance that it could absolutely tank, right, and come across super cringy. Yeah. There was that show on Shotmakers, which I think was on maybe ESPN, which was kind of similar, except using Topgolf and giving, teams certain challenges and trying to get influencer golfers to come in and be part of those teams and drive a new audience. And it certainly tanked. I I guess it's different because this time around you've actually got PGA Tour level players having a dig. So it'll be interesting to see how it does unfold. I'd be lying if I didn't say that I've found some of the team names and the hoopla around team launches and that entirely cringy. But again, that's something that's been leveled at Live, right? So, I don't want to be one of those guys.
It'll be interesting. I think pace is going to be the interesting part of it, like how quick they can make it, how action-packed it can be. Obviously we've got a lot of stadium type of sports, but to me, the sort of the benchmark might be something like darts. Like you see darts, so you got the crowd sort of getting right into it, which will make a sort of, I think that would sort of play into it a lot. But, quick games, the crowd's going wild. I think that's what will certainly make it a good sort of TV product.
And the key there is going to be authenticity. Like if it is canned crowd engagement and it's forced and just manufactured, it's just going to be a total cringe fest. But I guess similar to BBL, where crowds genuinely are entertained by what's going on field, it could be an entirely new market. But I'd say there's a big question mark over it.
Yeah, again. So if we just keep looking at that sort of BBL or that 2020 cricket, so it's sort of, I guess initially it played off the big stars coming from the other formats of the game, and that's sort of what drove the crowd. You want to see the best people in the world play, so the same applies for golf. I think then the ecosystem evolved, and we got more of these domestic competitions sort of enter the fray. And also, I think the big thing also is the World Cup, the fact that world cricket sort of brought it into the international schedule as well. And so you've got the 2020 World Cup, which now realistically is bigger than the 50 over game now. So there is that whole ecosystem which sort of supported it and made it mean something. Even if the big bash might not really mean something, it's the holistically the players involved and its position in world cricket makes it mean something. Maybe they can do that with the TGL if you're sort of playing off the real golf we see on the PGA Tour and majors and getting the superstars playing. But I think it will depend on whether or not you can get that buy-in from all the superstars.
Yeah. And I guess the key difference is in terms of cricket, and I guess we're talking about BBL here in Australia, but really the flagship is the IPL in India. You're not having two rival cricket leagues warring for that same talent
At once
to go into the IPL. And so, therefore, the strength of the IPL is that it genuinely does have all the best players together at the one time. So, anyway, we'll see how it goes, see if they can get their stadium up and running, unlike this year. And I wait with bated breath to see how it pans out.
Yep. So McIlroy leads the race to Dubai with just the final remaining. He's got a fair sort of gap between him and Tristan Lawrence. He's going to win his sixth. Is it his sixth or his seventh?
His sixth, yeah.
Race to Dubai.
Looks set to do it again, be his third in a row. I mean, you kind of got to ask the question, like, how are these things set up where you've got a guy that plays so infrequently on that tour, just constantly being at the top? I mean, maybe it's because he just wins when he comes and plays. But it does seem demoralizing for the guys that play week in, week out. People like Tristan Lawrence who've had good success and, are legitimate top tier talent on the DP World Tour.
Yeah, it really is a feeder now. Like in terms of like the 10 PGA Tour cards is really what you're playing on that tour for now, because as you say, it's unlikely if you're not in the majors that you're going to be competing for the race to Dubai, really, because if you look at go down the list now, we've got Rory, McIlroy, Billy Horschel's in there, Tyrrell Hatton, Tommy Fleetwood, Rob McIntyre.
Adam Scott was well up there too.
Yeah. Adam Scott, yep. Yeah, definitely. But I think it's all sort of designed around the fact that keeping European Tour membership for Ryder Cup eligibility. So we saw Rahm, which I thought he'd announced it previously that he wasn't going to be playing these events, but sort of the media picked up the fact that him and Hatton in particular were going to be playing these finals. So I thought personally that he said he was pretty much, after he played enough or played that sort of Spanish swing, that was him done for the season, which it looks like it has now been the case. And then going on past years, the fact that he plays the bare minimum just to keep his Ryder Cup eligibilities. I saw John Huggan come out and say that essentially say that they should not pick Rahm because he's not playing in these particular events. But I think that's a pretty sort of long straw to be sort of pulling there, because like history shows he's never been a real European Tour member. He's played college golf in the US. He's gotten directly onto the PGA Tour, and then he's always played the bare minimum to keep his eligibility.
Yeah, I found it an odd tweet. And, what would he say if Rory didn't want to play them? Would he be having the same stance? I mean, the reality is if the Europeans want to be competitive at the Ryder Cup at Bethpage next year, then they just they absolutely have to pick him. So he's made the minimum 4, which I think was what the 2 Spanish Opens, the Alfred Dunhill, and then the Olympics. Like, ridiculous that the Olympics does qualify. I mean, maybe there's more a point around whether the Olympics should be a qualifying event as opposed to, once you've played your 4, having a dummy spit that you're not playing the final 2 events of the season. But as you say, Rahm's not really changed very much in terms of his playing, his playing schedule. And so, if you have a look, he's done the 4 DP World Tour events. He's done the 14 live events and the majors. So I mean, it's still pretty full calendar when you look at it like that.
Yeah, it is. It is. And here's so we've got in terms of eligibility, a couple of guys, Hovland, and who's the other one? Oh, there's a couple of guys that are injured, right? So they haven't played their minimum events on the European Tour card. They will maintain their membership because they're injured. What about paternity leave? Like, shouldn't Rahm's just had his third kid?
Well, in this day and age, definitely, right?
This day and age. Oh, everyone's going left. So we know the world sort of, the leftism and whatever is taking over the world. So we know there's no sort of swing back to the right, really, or is there?
We're probably going to have to talk about that too, aren't we?
We will. Let's look at the, before we do, let's look at the Worldwide Technologies Championship. So as I said, Austin Eckert won there, beat Justin Lower, Carson Young, Max Greisemann. Did you get to watch any of that or much of that at all?
I caught little bits of it. Main focus was certainly over in Abu Dhabi, but I did see that Nico Echevarria sort of backed up with some decent form off the back of his win at the Zozos. So sort of heading into Sunday, he was equal lead with Justin Lower and Carson Young. And then, as you sort of said, Eckroat, Greisemann, Highsmith, pretty close there, one shot back. So it was there for the taking, and it was a shootout in the final day. Eckroat had 11 birdies in his final round, including 5 on the back 9. So even with bogey on the 18th, it was still good enough for him to come home with the win. And, brings up his second win after winning the Cognizant earlier this year in March. And I understand he's the 7th player so far on tour to have multiple wins this year, which I guess you got to look at that and say that the breadth of talent is certainly getting spread on the PGA Tour.
Yeah, it certainly is. There's still I guess like where it's hard to sort of to look at the PGA Tour as a 45, 50 week sort of season, because it is 2 tours.
A and B, isn't it?
So Yeah. So we're still seeing those events on paper sort of mean the same, but it's getting harder. It's getting harder and harder to sort of differentiate between the two.
These ones should be a 0.5 of a win. Is that where we're going?
Well, they're not PGA Tour wins. That's
You
the
can't
big
compare
thing,
it to
really.
a signature event win, can you? And
No,
I
you
guess
can't. You can't
it's kind
compare
of
it
hard to
to.
compare it to a pre-live PGA Tour win as well.
Yeah, yeah, correct. Like that's where you sort of like it is. Probably does benefit that it is becoming two tours again, but we're just in that like this. They get a bunch of exemptions now for a win. They get the 2 years on tour. I don't know that they get into all the majors, or maybe not the Masters potentially for this full swing, but they still get a lot of benefit out of it. And whether or not they should, I don't know.
Yeah, it's the fall season's just been something that been an irritant to me because of what it's done, obviously to other tours around the world. But Live might be a way of addressing that and remedying a lot of that. But it's hard to sort of, get really excited about the worldwide technologies or, even what we've got coming next week at the Butterfield. So, that fall season, there's certainly a case for sort of maybe doing away with it.
I like it. I like it, but I just don't
Yeah.
pay attention to it as much.
You like it, but you
As
don't
I said,
care.
I think it needs to be flipped. Yeah, that's for the vast majority of golf. That's
Yeah.
what it is, right? Like, there are so many places for professional golfers to play. Someone sort of mentioned the fact, maybe it was Rob Ops, was talking of the fact that like a lot of these guys aren't. It's getting there's less and less places for pro golfers, but there is a lot of golfers. I think across the PGA Tour system, there was 400 golfers who earned more than $100,000 in the past 12 months. And if you compare that to like the MLS, which is the Major League Soccer, which has roughly the same sort of market cap that the PGA Tour does, I think they had 960 players, and the top sort of 10 or 15 players earned like 40% of the market cap available. It is crazy. So the golfers are earning a pretty reasonable sort of living.
Yeah, they definitely are. That's for sure. I guess it's only got a lot better though since Liv came in and forced the PGA Tour's hand on these sorts of things.
Yep, but the money should flow to the top guys because they're the ones that matter, and they're pretty much, the only ones that we want to see in the day. The Australian Legends Tour, tell me about that a little bit. I didn't catch any of it.
Yeah, it's an interesting little watch on Sunday afternoon at Richmond Golf Club there at Hawkesbury. So Andre Stoltz ended up being the runaway winner, taking out the tournament by 5 shots. So that's his second senior PGA Tour title. Some familiar names on the leaderboard. So Peter Lonard, who we all know and remember as a former Australian Open and former Australian PGA champ, was in contention. Same with Matt Goggin. So he's a former PGA Tour player from the 2000s. He had 5 wins on the KFT and had a pretty solid finish at the 2009 Open Championship with a T5. So you kind of forget that sort of stuff and that pedigree. And, he's probably more known now for being the founder of 7 Mile Beach, the new course that's being developed and built in Tasmania. But as it turns out, Stoltz, sort of a former PGA Tour player himself, was too good. It was interesting to sort of see him. He's a multiple winner on the Aussie Legends Tour and made a good comeback from a heart attack that he had 3 years ago whilst playing a Pro-Am here in Brisbane. So ultimately he was too good. He went into the final round with a 2-shot lead and sort of, he moved that out to a 5-shot lead, but they had back-to-back bogeys on 12 and 13, which reduced it to 3, but went on a bit of a birdie run and closed it out without too much drama in the end. So, as I say, a good sort of Sunday afternoon watch. A few names that were blasts from the past. unless you're keeping up the speed with the Legends Tour on a week-to-week basis. Just interesting to see some of these, regional courses that they get round and play and how they sort of stack up to being played in tournament conditions.
There's a fair bit of talent, golfing talent on that 7 Mile Beach team, isn't there? Lucas Michel, who's he's the Mid-Am. He was the 2019 Mid-Am champion. So he's sort of stayed that sort of amateur status, but he works down there as well with Mike Clayton. But looking forward to that opening.
Well, Clayton's pretty bullish about the place, isn't he? You can't be. How far away is it from opening? Like, I was having a look on the website just before. It was saying open in 2024. We've only got 6 weeks left of the year.
Do they have like 12 holes, or it's 9 holes sort of
good to go?
A bit of preview play at the moment or something like that. Yeah. But it's going to like that sort of southern Tasmania. There's a few courses sort of slated in and around the region. Like it's going to be another good golf trip for us. I guess.
I'm looking forward to seeing it. That's for sure. Whereabouts in Tasmania is it? How close to Barnbougle?
Hobart.
Okay.
So Hobart, and there's a couple of peninsulas sort of where this course is. There's 7 Mile. I think there's maybe at least one other site that they're looking at, another pretty good golf course. I'm not sure if it's these guys or someone else, but there's potentially 2 or 3 courses that are going to be added to what's already down there, and it's going to be a destination unto itself for sure.
Yep, can't wait.
Yep. Now we're seeing a little bit of politics at play potentially here. So we've got the New South Wales Open featuring Cam Smith this week. Not at all scheduled for any sort of TV window. Now the reason that's a little bit sort of politicking is the fact that New South Wales have been essentially the only state who have sort of held off going into this one golf alliance that is run by all the states and Golf Australia. They're being iced out a little bit.
So I saw this discussion on X, and it did sort of perplex me. Like, why would we not be having the New South Wales Open broadcast on TV where you got Cam Smith headlining? Yet we broadcast the Queensland PGA where, again, Cam Smith was headlining, and you're going to have almost identically the same talent playing. So I knew there must be more to the story, and I guess you've just drawn it out there. It's the politics between Golf Australia and the other sort of governing bodies around the country versus Golf New South Wales. Which kind of I do find a little surprising, because I would have thought that Golf New South Wales is effectively just a state chapter of Golf Australia, and that Golf Australia would have powers, shall we say, to make them fall into line.
No, well, that's where they don't, and their reasonings for it. Like, there's a lot of sort of, it's a very bloated sort of organization, Golf Australia, and the New South Wales guys in particular don't feel that they're potentially like they would serve the best interests of golfers in their state. So it's interesting. So to date, it looks like they're doing quite well, because you look at purse sizes with the New South Wales Open is 800,000. I think that compares to the PGA Champs was a couple 100,000. I think it was. So the New South Wales Open is almost at the level of the big 2 or 3 events that we see down here.
The Queensland PGA Champs, we're saying? Yeah.
Yeah. I think that was a couple $100,000 purse.
Yeah, might have been 2. Yep.
So this is
more significant.
New South Wales is 4x that, and getting close to the 1.2-ish million of the Australian Open.
Yep.
And
I think the Australian PGA is
Australian
more
PGA
2 now, isn't it?
Yeah, so that'll be interesting to see how that continues to unfold, because I think the WA were the last state to join that alliance, that One Golf Alliance, and it's just the New South Wales guys that sort of are holding off now.
Yeah, look, it's interesting that there's politics surrounding Golf Australia. Just need to have a look at who the CEO is to understand why there might be politics there, and also why there might be a complete lack of faith in that organisation. I can't say I was a huge fan of him when he was the CEO at Cricket Australia, and I think, Cricket Australia as a governing board really deteriorated under his leadership and his stewardship. The way Sandpaper Gate was dealt with was an absolute abomination, and he was front and centre for all that. So yeah, not surprising that maybe there's a lack of faith in Golf Australia.
Events this week, we've got the Butterfield, as you already mentioned, in Bermuda. They've got the Tour Championship, which is now drops down to the top 30 on that. It is, yep. So that's in Dubai.
Nice little purse there.
So we've got there Nikolai. Nice little purse there, $10 million. Nikolai Højgaard is the defending champ, so he will be there. Rory, obviously, we discussed, is probably the man to beat. And looks like he's going to take out his 6th race to Dubai. On the PGA Tour, we've got the New South Wales Open, which is on the border up on the Murray. That's at the Murray Downs Golf and Country Club. Cam Smith is there, Jeff Ogilvy, Curtis Sluck, Jake McLeod, Elvis Smiley, Jack Buchanan, Lucas.
I'm seeing the notes there. I put
Umberto.
That's that's a.
Is that Lucas Herbert?
Lucas Herbert. That's an auto.
I skipped it because I was like, I'm not sure. Okay. I was going to read it as well.
Funny.
And then the LPGA Tour has the Annika. The Annika. That's it. That's the title.
Yeah, that's right. After Annika Sorenstam. So it's her event. And I guess you've made it as a golfer when the tournament's just called your first name.
The Annika.
Decent little purse there at Bel Air in Florida, not Bel Air, Los Angeles. 3.25 for the ladies. And defending champ Lilia Vu will be back to defend her title, along with all the big names: Nelly, Lydia Ko, Hannah Green, Yuka Sasso, Charlie Hull, Minji. So a good event for the ladies there.
Yes. So in other news, Trump obviously elected. We saw Rory sort of touch on there. You sort of asked the question of whether or not that means we might see a coming together of the two tours. I'm not so sure. We're now late. Trump's not going to get into power until late January. So we're talking 2026, really, at least, probably 27. I don't know that he's got the authority to sort of push that through the DOJ if the DOJ.
So what's your thinking there in terms of the timing, 26, 27? If Trump takes, is
well, at least because
in
Trump,
Jan 25?
Yeah, correct. So you're not talking and coming together until at least the following season. So the 26 season.
So you're saying it'll be too late to enact anything for next year's season.
Yeah. So we're talking 26, probably more likely 27, the way the PGA Tour works. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think from that perspective there's going to be too much that Trump is going to affect in terms of the current discussion.
Yeah, look, as you say, Rory made comment on it. I think he got canned across social media for sort of insinuating that Trump and Musk might be able to get shit done. But I guess his take on it was Trump's a golf lover, so therefore he might have a personal interest in seeing something develop. And secondly, he's got strong relationships with Saudi Arabia coming out of the work that was done around the Abrams Accords. So maybe there's something in that, maybe there's not. I did see Joe Pompliano sort of post about this and how he thought that it would be easier to get regulatory approval through the DOJ under Trump. Look, I guess it'll depend, on who he puts into his cabinet and then who comes into the bureaucracies. Certainly there's going to be an agenda within the Trump administration of removing red tape and allowing business to get on with things. So I think theoretically there is sort of a plausible story or narrative there that it could happen. But for me, I'm not sure it really changes too much. I mean, hasn't the real impediment to this deal being struck always been Tiger and the vengeful PGA Tour players that want compensation and reparations and whatnot from the players that went to live. Like, that's really what's holding this up, as opposed to sort of some DOJ, antitrust matter.
Definitely, when you can consider the investment they're talking about in the NFL, foreign investment or outside investment, like that's going to come from foreign sort of governments as well, like the PIF. Really, they're going to be sort of in and around that. So yeah, no, I think it's been a good cover for those that maybe want to delay it as long as possible. This sort of DOJ sort of involvement. And if there was any sort of DOJ involvement, there's a little bit of talk about the fact that maybe the incumbents will want to sort of wrap up what they can and sort of push forward, or sort of maybe sort of push some cases through prior to Trump coming in and their successor coming in. But I can't really see that because he's got pretty much full control, Trump, in terms of he's won the election in a landslide, has control of the Senate and the House. I don't think anyone's going to want to put Trump more offside, because it would come down hard on, a bit of retribution potentially on anybody, as we saw with the fact that the charges for Trump were all dropped pretty much immediately.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, there's been a lot of talk about Trump, but what we didn't talk about was, the incredible sort of victory and acceptance speech that he gave actually on the night when the election was declared in his favor. And so, it was extraordinary scenes there. 3 a.m. in the morning, there's Trump surrounded by his family, Susie Wiles, his new chief of staff, all his strategic advisors, Don Jr., Eric, Elon Musk is up there, Dana White, all these heavy hitters. And who does Trump call out? Our mate Bryson. Throws to Bryson, an accolade to Bryson. And where's Bryson? He's nowhere to be seen. He had to be called from backstage. But then he comes out on stage and, my God, did he look sheepish. He was like a deer in headlights wearing his MAGA cap. So just extraordinary scenes for the golfing world there on a historic political moment for the US of A.
Just incredible. I tried to monitor whether or not he would see a spike for his YouTube channel. But he didn't.
What happened to his followers? Did he lose? Did he lose any subscribers?
No, he's sort of stuck at just under 1.6 million. But I monitored that. I thought, I'm going to check. I'm going to see where he's at now and see if this has any impact on his follower base. But it really hasn't.
It's interesting.
Changed.
So the other
hasn't changed.
Sort of very political account on X, the Tour Golf account, that is certainly a MAGA account. He had some pretty wild tweets and memes, certainly not a Harris or a Democrats fan. But he was talking about how many followers that account had lost during the course of the election. And I mean, it might have been 17,000 or something like that. But I thought it would have been a huge amount more. Anyway, he posted how many he'd lost, and then Elon Musk retweeted it with a big hand clap. So it was just some wild scenes. It's been such an interesting process to observe and watch from afar.
X was like, I started liking a few sort of posts in and around sort of Trump winning. And just sort of, I thought there were some funny posts. And the fact that Twitter now doesn't show you the likes as well, if I want to try and stay apolitical if I can. But within 24 hours, I tried to undo it because I was seeing too much Trump stuff. And I would have spent like 2 or 3 hours like blocking words, trying to train Twitter back to, looking at just golf content. It took so long to unwind it. So whether or not Musk has sort of pulled some strings to sort of make to make the thumb
on the scale of
the timeline, I don't know. It was crazy. It was just, that was all that was on X. It was just Trump and Twitter and politics, and it was God. I had to go to bed at one point. I think by the morning it had sort of fixed itself up. But I would have spent, as I said, a couple of hours trying to get it out of
Yeah,
my
you've got to be
timeline.
cautious of what you like and what you open.
Oh, yeah, it was crazy, crazy. Politics for me, I've never been, I think I learnt early that most people are good. Most people are relatively central. They may have leanings one way or the other. And that for the most part, like if one party goes too far in either direction, then there's going to be a
Mhm.
correction and the other party will come into power. So for that reason, I've kind of I just haven't had an interest in politics because they don't affect our
Yep.
lives really. The first time it really affected my life was through the COVID
Mm.
lockdowns and the
Certainly
Victorian
affected
government.
your life down there.
It did, yep, and that's the only time I thought sort of realised I have potentially a little bit more power than what I thought really. But
And I guess historically they
you know,
didn't have that level of control, but it was ceded definitely during COVID.
yep.
And I guess the question is now how much of that ceding of control and power can we resume back as citizens? But anyway, we're a golf podcast. We're not a politics podcast, but it was
Yeah.
interesting to see the nexus between Trump's election and golf because it certainly was there. And in true and typical Trump fashion, he was out on course over the weekend at Trump Palm Beach playing with his granddaughter, Kai, who's going to be going and
Yes.
playing college golf, I think, next year. And there was Uncle Elon and his son X watching on from the galleries.
Kai is the next superstar. So she's a couple 100,000 subscribers on YouTube in the last month or so since she created her account. On X, she completely blew up. Like in terms of, I think she also created an X account, and she's at sort of where is she now? She's at nearly 500,000
right?
followers on X.
Now, when you say
and she joined in
when
August
you say
this year.
superstar, do you mean that legitimately in terms of talent, or are you just saying
No,
in terms of influence?
Yeah,
Yep.
influence. She's very talented. Whether or not that means she goes, plays professionally, but she's certainly set in terms of from the perspective of YouTube.
If she wants to do
because she's
Luke
quite
Wong
attractive
style thing, Bryson style thing,
she's
she
quite
should be
attractive.
locked
She's
and loaded.
talented.
Mhm.
She's young. Yep, absolutely, and she's got connections.
100%, she's got connections now. Got the best connections.
Yeah. Yes. So the other news, I guess, was sort of, around the Abu Dhabi Championship was the fact that Rory's talking about playing a little bit less in 2025.
Yeah, and I think it's probably exaggerated by the fact that he played so much this year. 26 events this year, and is talking of scaling that back to sort of 18 or 19 next year. Like the way I think about it is that those top guys, the very top players, at best, you're probably going to see them 18 or 19 times, which is going to be sort of 14 times on tour, plus the 4 majors and maybe like a national championship that's important to them, or an Olympics, or kind of a Ryder Cup or President's Cup style event. So I think it's a storm in a teacup myself to hear him sort of talk about that. I was probably more surprised to see that he'd played 26 times this year. But having said that, he is talking about missing some signature events and maybe the first event of the FedEx Cup playoffs. And so that, to my mind, does start to ring some alarm bells, in the sense that wasn't the point of the signature events to get all the big names together. That, he was part of the committee and the powwow group that came up with this idea of, well, our path to beating LIV and our path to defending off the LIV competition is to have these signature events. And so everybody's got to commit to be there. Yet he missed, at least a couple of them this year. And, as we're talking about him missing particularly like the first playoff event, the FedEx Cup playoffs, like kind of just undermines the playoffs and their importance, to the overall season, doesn't it?
Definitely. And he was talking, so he misses the first event in terms of Kapalua. And then also, I think he was talking about Harbour Town or the Heritage. And it makes sense. Like as a golfer who's essentially an independent contractor who doesn't need to play any specific events, if there's a course he doesn't like or that doesn't suit his schedule, of course he's
Mm.
going to skip them. He doesn't need the
Yeah.
money. And I think, but this is the problem, as you say. Like this is where Live has still got a huge advantage over the PGA Tour because they contract their players. They have to play unless they're injured. And until that's the case on the PGA Tour, we will see more and more of this. Particularly, as I say, the reasoning for Rory missing the first playoff is the fact that his position didn't really alter that much when he finished almost dead last in that particular event. So he's like, well, why would I play 3 weeks in a row or whatever it is when I don't need to? There's not a lot of benefit out of it. So the next course we're going to see is people like a Scotty Scheffler, who, he's got his young family starting. If he has a course that doesn't suit him, which very few and far between, but if you have as a course or a location he doesn't like, he'll start skipping them as well. That we're going to be back down to getting the best guys on the PGA Tour competing against each other 5 or 6 times a year, and that's it.
Hey, look, maybe the PGA
Outside of the
PGA
majors.
Tour needs to have a look at course selection in that event. If he's going to skip the courses that he doesn't like. I mean, we know that there are some stops on tour that aren't chosen for the quality of their golf course architecture or for the test or the challenge that they provide to the golfers. And so maybe if you can enhance and elevate that quality of course choice, maybe he's more inclined to play. But I think it kind of comes back to your point. He doesn't need the money. He's going to pick a schedule that suits him. And there's very little that the tour can do about that.
I think that's the problem they need to continue to address through. Hopefully, it works with the fact that they're no longer, or the fact they've got the commercial entity above them. Maybe they can start putting in limited contracts or something like that for these guys. But I think they need to do it because otherwise, we're not going to get a better product.
Agree.
Top 10 DP World Tour earning or PGA Tour cards at this stage. Anyone jumping out off that list?
I mean, Tristan Lawrence will be a big loss to the DP World Tour. Højgaard is going to go and join his brother Nikolai. So Rasmus is on that list there. Matteo Manacero, Brendan Porath will be extremely excited to have him as a regular on the PGA Tour if that happens, along with Thorbjorn Olesen, another shotgun start favourite. So I guess those boys from a shotgun start are looking at this list, licking their lips. But, the other one that did sort of stand out was more on the bubble. You got Laurie Cantor not far off that top 10 and, a good win or a good week or certainly a win next week in Dubai, you'd think would push him into that 10 list. But as I understand it, he'd be immediately banned due to playing on previously playing on Live, so it would kind of be a Clayton's PGA Tour card.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. He's never been a member of the PGA Tour,
and that's
he's
right.
going to serve as 6 months of suspension.
And I mean, at best, he's been kind of a bit player, really, hasn't he?
Yeah, yep, on Live, yep, filled in a few times and whatnot.
What'd you make of J-Day? Did you pick up the interview there that he had with the Australian, talking about sort of why he hasn't been back to Australia very much and also why he hasn't joined Live?
I did a little bit. I'm not sure that's the truthful answer. There's probably more to the fact that, although I'd probably think that Norman would let that get out of him, but Norman and him don't get along very well, I don't think.
The injuries,
so
the
maybe he was
excuse
considered,
was convenient, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think a little.
And I kind of felt the same way for using the injury excuse for not coming back to Australia more regularly. I certainly had more sympathy and empathy for the points that he was making around his mum, sort of the final few years and undergoing cancer treatment and whatnot over in the US. So definitely understood that. But I mean, the guy is flying private, right? And so I think there would be ways to navigate that. But hey, I'm not the one with the back injury. But yeah, I felt the same as you. The snub by Liv probably had more to do with the animosity with Norman, because Norman doesn't forget, right? He is a guy that I think kind of remembers those types of things. So if they've got history, it's kind of hard for Greg to move past. It just would have been a hard no, I would have thought.
The other one, actually, I think, was it over the news article dropped the fact that Adam Scott was missing the Aussie season this year for the first time in 25 or something like that. Citing the fact that maybe he's only got a couple of years of realistic competitiveness in the majors. I thought that was fair enough.
Yeah, and Cam Smith came out to defend his fellow Queenslander in pretty staunch terms, saying that, he's earned the right to have a year off. He's been, without question, I think Australia's #1 golf ambassador after Norman. And, he has had to play a lot more this year because he's had to try and qualify for majors. And then also, particularly coming down the stretch there as the FedEx Cup playoffs were closing the loop on top 50, top 30, etc. He was right on the bubble there for those cutoffs. So he definitely has played a lot more. Bitterly disappointed that he won't be out here. It'd be great to see him, but I can certainly appreciate the comments from Smithy that he's deserved a year off.
May also be a silent protest to the fact that J-Day's undoubtedly getting paid big dollars to come and visit. I know a few years ago he wasn't happy that money was being thrown his way, to J-Day's way, and not to they're not looking after the guys who come back and support.
Very interesting.
The tour every year.
Interesting.
So who knows?
I mean,
maybe it's just a silent
I'd like
protest.
to think that he's not a vindictive person, but it'd be a tough pill to swallow, wouldn't it?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Like you sort of compare your worth against your peers, and if you're not getting paid by somebody and someone you consider a peer is, like it would take someone very big to just swallow that.
Particularly given that you've done more than that person has ever done for Australian golf. In your pinky toe than they've done their entire careers. So yeah, I could understand that.
Yep. John Daly's 1995 Open Championship trophy is up for sale.
Yeah, I was surprised to see that he would be putting this up for sale. So it's been available for auction since the 7th of November. The starting bid I think was 500, but 58 bids later we're now at about 78k. But I just don't know that I'd ever sell something like that if I'd won it, but maybe his financial circumstances require it.
Yeah, well, it doesn't look like he's going to get I was trying to find it, the nearly $1 million bid that Dorothy's red Wizard of Oz shoes are going to get at auction.
Look, Daly's probably holding out for a position in Trump's cabinet anyway, so maybe Uncle Donald will help him out of his financial trouble and he won't need to sell his British Open trophy.
People will buy anything, won't they? Like, that's $1 million for a pair of slippers. It's
ridiculous.
Crazy. That actually, that $1 million now, and that auction is continuing until the 7th of December for anyone who wants to make a bid.
I don't think it'll be any of our listeners, mate.
Oh, goodness. Anything else for the week?
No, I think that's it. So, we've got the New South Wales Open this week and obviously the other events that we talked about. But I think we'll try and do a preview pod for the PGA Championships next week. So, as we talked about before, really appreciate your support and listening. Be great if you could drop us a follow, a like, subscribe, all those sorts of things, a 5-star rating. Just helps us build out the pod to a greater extent. Look forward to having you back next week for a listen.
Brilliant. Thanks for tuning in. Speak again next week.